What was the relationship between Ile-Ife and Oyo? Hello, welcome to the Sankofa Pan-African series. Please click on your subscription and notification buttons if you've not yet done so. Now, between 1600 and 1800, Oyo, one of the Yoruba states, evolved into an empire which transcended all other Yoruba principalities politically in terms of military might. The Yoruba people in Nigeria occupied the southwestern part of that country, and oral tradition traces their origin to Ile-Ife, and they view themselves as belonging to one ethnic group because they are believed to have descended from Oduduwa, the founding father of Ile-Ife. Oduduwa is said to have migrated to Ile-Ife. Please watch the episode on Ife to know more about the evolution of the Yoruba, if you've not yet done so. It is believed that one of Oduduwa's sons, Oronyo, also known as Orominyo, became the first Alaafin or ruler of Oyo. Also, according to oral tradition, Oduduwa is believed to have fathered the founders of major Yoruba kingdoms. According to some traditions, Ile-Ife witnessed population expansion, which then put a strain on its resources around the 14th century. This then led to the migration of several groups of out of Ile-Ife. According to other versions, pressure on the land caused by expanding population and a great drought and famine led the people of Ife to convene a meeting during which it was decided that some people should leave. Some scholars suggest that a decision was taken at Ile-Ife in a place called Ita-Ijero, which means place of deliberation, in order to determine which direction each of the groups of people emigrating would follow. So in order to keep the familial contact between Ife and the new places where the migrants would settle, the children of Oduduwa were appointed to lead each group. This account is shared by several settlements of Yoruba people who point to the migration, to this migration from Ife as a form of deliberate dispersal to increase the number of people and places founded by descendants of Oduduwa. And according to Robotolaninyo, although the exact number of kingdoms founded as a result of this exercise is usually contested, he suggests that at least 16 kingdoms are known to have been formed in various parts of Yoruba land, which then modeled themselves after Ife. While these kingdoms remained autonomous, they considered themselves kinsmen, Ebi, and they held periodic renewal of contacts with Ile-Ife, their ancestral home. The political administration of these Yoruba states also often had many towns, villages, farmsteads, with one town serving as the capital where the Oba lived. Each town or village was made up of lineages headed by a Baale, who then answered to the Oba. The position of Oba of towns founded by Ife princes or descendants of Oduduwa, continue to be ruled even till today by people whose ancestry can be traced to Odua. Although, as a ruler, Obas were politically supreme. However, Olaniyan surmises that in reality there were checks and balances which stopped them from becoming absolute monarchs. For example, an Oba could not rule single-handedly, but only in conjunction with the Iwarefa, a council of chiefs. The council of chiefs, in turn, consisted of two groups. One group, which was made up of heads of the various lineages, represented the interests of the commoners, while the second group represented the interests of the king and the royal family. It is believed that Oyo, one of such Yoruba settlements, thrived because of its favorable trading position, its natural resources, and the industry of its inhabitants. As I noted earlier, the ruler of Oyo is called Alaafin, and various Alaafins left their marks. The power of Oyo grew under one of its rulers, Alaafin Orompoto, who used the wealth derived from trade to establish a cavalry force and to maintain a trained army. Even after the ascendance of Oyo, the sacred aspect of Yoruba kingship, and which prevented the Alaafin from becoming an autocrat, continued to prevail. Rulers were bound by rules and precedents, and they were required to submit all business to councils of chiefs and officers. Policies could only be proclaimed under the king's name after consultation and deliberation by these bodies. It is believed that the initial founders of Oyo settled in Oyo-Ile, Kusu, and Igboho. From 1450, Oyo prospered due to trade with some northern states in Hausa land, and later in the south with Portuguese sailing vessels that plied the coast of West Africa. Oyo also maintained dominance over the lands which became part of its empire through the maintenance of its formidable cavalry and archers, which enabled it to expand to areas of the southwest and in the savannah to the north, acquiring territory from its neighbors, the Bogu and Nupe states, around 1610. The Nupe had initially conquered Old Oyo around 1535 and held onto it until the Oyo kings regained it around 1610. Now, while some of Oyo's territorial expansion was motivated by the need to gain control of the lucrative regional trade routes along which salt, gold, and sadly slaves were transported, Oyo was unable to overcome some groups like the Ijesha, who inhabited forest areas where the Oyo cavalry could not be used effectively. And then there were also dangerous tsetse flies, which prevented them from being able to conquer the Ijesha. They also were unable to overcome the Ekiti, who dwelt in the hills bordering the far northern stretch of lands around Oyo. Now, the kingdom of Benin in the east was another formidable block to Oyo's ambitious trade. The Oyo territory, however, expanded to encompass various environments with portions of rainforest, dry forest, savannah, and mangrove swamps. Oyo benefited most from the savannah areas, which allowed easy movement and trade contacts with neighboring states. Oyo Empire traded in agricultural products like okra, yams, dates, palm oil, and fish. And the iron smelting technology was also highly developed, and this facilitated the production of iron tools and weapons, which it traded for kola, pepper, ivory, gold, and sadly again, like other major African states around this time, slaves. The empire also imported horses and goods from the Mediterranean, which had crossed the Sahara through camel caravans and therefore moving southwards across the savannah belt and down the river Niger. Tributary kings of other Yoruba kingdoms, which were conquered by Oyo, and the provincial governors of metropolitan Oyo collected tributes, which was then sent to Oyo, as well as contingents of troops to serve in the imperial army in times of major wars. These tributary kings had to pay homage to the Alaafin and reaffirm their duty of allegiance during religious ceremonies, which were held annually. In return for their allegiance, the Alaafin protected such states from external attacks, especially from the Muslim jihadists from the north. The Alaafin continued to be elected from amongst the direct descendants of Oronyo, son of Oduduwa, who, like I said, founded Oyo Ile, the original Oyo settlement. And even after Oyo emerged as an empire, the Alaafin did not have absolute power. His power was kept in check by the Oyomesi and the Ogboni. Now, of these two sets of chiefs, the Bashorun was the foremost and therefore served like a prime minister. While the Alaafin could not be deposed by the Council of Chiefs, he could be compelled to commit suicide. Because if both groups of chiefs, that is the Oyomesi and the Ogboni, found his conduct or policies disagreeable, or if the Alaafin lost the support of the citizens of Oyo, the chiefs would ask the Bashorun to present the Alaafin with an empty calabash containing the eggs of parrots, which was a symbolic way of announcing to the Alaafin that the gods, the people, and the earth had rejected him. The Alaafin then had no choice but to imbibe poison. Another way in which the powers of the Alaafin was kept in check was through an annual divination. The Bashorun was in charge of such religious divinations, which had to be performed every year in order to determine whether or not the Alaafin continued to retain the approval of the gods. Now, Robert Smith describes this as a form of annual performance review or spiritual vote of confidence. The Bashorun, who was a member of the Council of Chiefs, like I said, was therefore He was empowered to influence important decisions of the Oyomesi and the Ogboni, which also meant that the Bashorun acted as constitutional in concert, the Bashorun in concert with the Oyomesi and the Ogboni acted as the constitutional checks on the authority of the Alaafin. Thus, the Alaafin was bound to listen to their advice because ignoring their opinions could lead to the invitation for him to commit suicide. Now, I'd like to digress here by talking about the role of another military strongman in the Oyo Empire, the Are Ona Kakanfo, which in recent times has become very highly politicized amongst the Yoruba. Now, the position of Are Ona Kakanfo was that of a field marshal who was in charge of war chiefs known as the Esho. Although there were war chiefs, although these Are Ona Kakanfo were war chiefs, they were minor chiefs. However, because the Are Ona Kakanfo and his warlords were expected to be completely loyal to the Alaafin, while also being answerable to the Oyomesi, he was usually picked by the Oyomesi from among very lowly people. Sometimes he was even a slave. And according to Boahe, in order to further forestall the possibility of the Are Ona Kakanfo getting so power drunk that he would constitute a threat to the Alaafin due to the fact that he was in charge of the army, he was prohibited from actually entering the capital city. Unfortunately, this position has become ridiculously politicized, so much so that the position is referred to as the Are Ona Kakanfo of Yoruba land. I believe this misconception has arisen either because the present Alaafin wants to arrogate onto his office powers to which he is not traditionally entitled, or he has simply not taken the time to study the history of his position. Sadly, the Alaafin has been met with little or no resistance. Nigerian politicians and journalists also need to do some more research because they have accepted the nomenclature of Are Ona Kakanfo of Yoruba land without questioning its authenticity. And they keep repeating it, thereby propagating its use. I actually saw on TV a couple of years ago the previous governor of Lagos State, Akinwumi Ambode, who, while receiving Ganiu Adams, the then newly appointed Kakanfo, as the Are Ona Kakanfo of Yoruba land, he then pledged his support for Adams. Now, the irony of this is that Lagos was never ever captured by Oyo, and as such was never subject to the protection of the Oyo army, headed by the Kakanfo. Even the Yoruba kingdoms which fell under Oyo and were therefore tributary to it in the past, who paid tribute to Oyo, or who were compelled to pay tribute to Oyo in the past, are no longer subject to Oyo. To continue to flaunt the position of the Are as an Are of all Yoruba is not just historically incorrect, but quite disturbing and disrespectful to areas of Yoruba land that were never under any Are's control. Because to do so is to give to Oyo authority which it should not have over other Yoruba kingdoms and people. Anyway, to get back to the history of this remarkable empire, Oyo began to subjugate the kingdom of Dahomey, which lay west of it in 1730. Under one of its rulers, Aláàfin Ajagbo, Oyo also got involved with the transatlantic slave trade with European merchants on Dahomey's coast through the port of Ajashe, now known as Port Novo. Some rulers of Oyo concentrated on amassing wealth, while others advocated the use of wealth for territorial expansion. One ruler, Aláàfin Abiodun, who reigned between 1770 and 1789, conquered his opponents in a vicious civil war and pursued a policy of economic development based primarily on the coastal trade in Ajashe with European merchants. Unfortunately, in his pursuit of wealth, Abiodun neglected everything else, and this weakened the army, which had been the backbone of Oyo's power, and which previous Alaafins had used to maintain control. This left the kingdom vulnerable to local revolts, in which administration was tenuously maintained by a complex system of public service, and a decline in the authority of the tributary chiefs. The decline was later hastened by quarrels between one ruler and his advisors. Oyo just continued dawdling through the later 18th century and into the 19th century, when it began to lose control of its trade routes to the coast. It was invaded then by the newly risen people of Dahomey, whom he had captured before. And soon after 1800, substantial parts of the empire were captured by militant Fulani Muslims from the northeast. Thanks for watching, and please continue to support us by telling your contacts about us, and also keep sending your questions and comments to our community page. And don't forget to give us the thumbs up. See you next time.